Katie took a sip of wine and looked at the clock on the wall. It was 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. She didn't usually drink this early and alone, but now was a special occasion. She stared at the thin red box on the coffee table. She had gotten it last Saturday. She had received many others over the years. Usually, they were received with great delight. This one was different. She wasn't happy. She took the box and went into the bedroom. She put the box on the bed and opened the closet. She rummaged among the shoes and keepsake boxes she kept on the floor in the back of the closet until she found a plastic case the size of a shoebox. She opened the lid and saw a row of boxes inside. There were many white boxes, 2 silver boxes, 1 gold box, 4 blue boxes, and 1 black box. The red box she put at the end of the row of thin boxes in the shoebox. She wondered why she kept this box and its contents inside. For some reason, there was no way she could part with them. By chance, she picked up the third box and opened it. It contained a postcard and a CD. She inserted the CD into the player, and a gentle melody of When I Fall in Love by the Letterman came out of the speakers. She picked up the card and read what was written on it. The card didn't say who it was from or who it was being given to. There was no need for that. She knew who sent it. She had gotten it at work along with a big bouquet of flowers. All the girls in the office gathered around Katie to see who had sent her such a beautiful arrangement. She smiled confidently, opened the box, took out the CD, and inserted it into the player on her desk. The girls began to tease Katie. "What kind of guy sends you flowers and love songs at work?" Some wanted to know what was written on the card that came with the letter. Kathy waited for the right moment in the song to start recounting what was written on the card. When the right moment in the song came, she began to read, "When I give my heart, I give it all. Or I'll never fall in love. And the moment I feel it, that you feel it, too, that's when I fall in love with you." The girls fell silent as she read the words printed on the card. When she was done and the music died down, the girls went back to work. One of the female employees named Grace said, "That's a special guy. I'm jealous. Does he have a brother?" As Kathy listened to the music again, she looked up and saw Grace absent-mindedly rearranging the flowers. She said quietly to Kathy, "You received a beautiful gift from a special person today." "Thank you. The flowers are beautiful, aren't they?" Katie replied. Grace looked at her in surprise and was about to speak, but instead she turned and walked away. This continued until the girls finally went back to work. Katie thought for the first time that maybe she really did have something special. She was sure she would have if it hadn't been for John Williams. John had been her first love. He was her first boyfriend. He was the boy who took her to prom. He took her virginity when she was still a junior in high school. They had made love all through her last 2 years of high school. The last time was the night before he left for college. He was always in the back of her mind. He always occupied the part of her heart that kept her from fully committing herself to another man. After college, John went to Stanford in California to study medicine. Katie enrolled in community college in her home state of Florida. At first, they exchanged phone calls and letters. After a while, the letters stopped and the phone calls became less frequent and were replaced by emails. Soon, the email correspondence stopped as well. After a while, Kathy dropped out of school and got a job at Allstate Insurance Company. She now worked 9 to 5 sitting at a computer. She answered phones, sold insurance, typed letters, and any other duties that fell to her lot. Her day consisted of the same routine. She would get up, go to work, and come home. It was not satisfying, but it did pay the bills. The only relief was the nightly walks with her friend Lisa. She kept hoping to hear from John. Then she found out from John's friends that he was dating a college student. Now she knew why all contact had been cut off. For weeks she was depressed and cried herself to sleep every night. Still, she dreamed of what could have been. What would her life be like if John came back? She still hoped that her knight in white armor would return and pluck Kathy from her dreary existence to enjoy life as a doctor's wife. Then Kathy would become Mrs. Dr. John Williams. She allowed her fantasies and self-worth in real life to center around John Williams. He became an almost mythological figure that no other man could match. When weeks turned into months and John didn't return, she tried to put him out of her mind and move on with her life, but even if she didn't realize it, he was always there. Katie had always been an attractive girl. Not a beauty in the classic sense, but she had some earthy sensuality about her that drew men to her. Even when she was dating John, it didn't stop other guys from hitting on her. She was 5 feet 5 inches tall. She had long brown hair, usually parted down the middle of her head and slicked back under her chin. After she had made sure John was out of her life for good, she had had several relationships with men. Only one of them had turned out to be handsome and had lasted 5 months before she'd broken up with him. Incredibly, she felt guilty as she still carried John's torch inside her. Guilt over what she considered cheating had ruined most of her relationships with men. Her reputation was by no means easy. She was 25 years old when she met Tom. He was unlike any of the men she had dated in the past. Tom had joined the army at the age of 18. After 6 years of service, during which he had time in Iraq, Germany, and Afghanistan, he was discharged from the army. He was an infantryman and had time to fight. When he returned home to Florida, he opened a small auto repair shop near where Kathy worked. Tom thought it was fate when he saw Kathy and her dancing feet entering the shop. He was sitting at his desk in his office at the back of the store, and she didn't see him. With her was her best friend Lisa, who she had dropped off at work that morning. She was wearing a white low-cut top with black polka dots. A short black miniskirt and black high-heeled shoes completed her look. Tom was mesmerized. He had never seen such an exquisite woman. "Hi," Kathy called out. "Is anyone there?" Tom came out of the office and said, "What can I do for you, miss?" Kathy explained that her car wouldn't start and was in the insurance company parking lot on the next street over. It was getting close to closing time, and she knew he must want to drive home. She hoped he'd turn out to be like every other man she'd met in her life and would do whatever she wanted if she showed a little of what she had. Tom, stammering, told her that he would call a tow truck and pick up her car and bring it to the store to have it inspected. As both girls followed him to the truck, they threw meaningful glances at each other. They had both used their looks to manipulate men on more than one occasion. As they pulled into the parking lot, Tom opened the hood of her late-model Camry. Looking inside, he noticed that the ground wire had come loose. A few twists with a screwdriver, and Tom told her to try to start the car. To Kathy's surprise, it started immediately. Kathy smiled broadly at Tom, and he smiled back. He thought feverishly about what to say, what to try, how to spend some more time with this attractive woman, but he couldn't think of anything. Kathy got out of the car and asked, "How much do I owe you for a quick fix?" Tom didn't want to charge anything for this small favor. He said that just getting that wide smile was payment enough. Kathy looked into those green eyes, walked over to this handsome mechanic and kissed him on the cheek with the words, "Thank you very much." When she pulled away, she saw that his face had turned 3 shades of red. As she walked to the car door, an idea occurred to her. Quickly turning to face him, she asked if he would like to have dinner at her place tomorrow night as payment for the repairs. With widened eyes and a smile, he replied, "Yes, I would like that very much." For a second, Kathy thought of John, and a flicker of regret flashed through her. But as soon as it appeared, it was immediately gone. She had a good feeling for this man who until an hour ago had been a stranger to her. She felt that she could trust him. She found him intriguing. She had a hunch he wouldn't be a mechanic for long, and premonitions were rarely wrong. Taking a business card out of her purse, she smiled and held it out to him. "Call me tomorrow, and I'll give you directions to my apartment. Thanks again for helping me out today." Tom finally came to his senses and smiled as he got into the car. He would be sure to call her tomorrow. He just couldn't wait. Lisa pounced on Kathy as she pulled out of the parking lot. "What are you thinking? It's not like you hardly know the guy. Besides, I know you. The mechanic isn't the kind of guy you usually go out with." Kathy was unfazed. "You know where he works. If anything happens, you can tell the police who I was with. Besides, I'm sure he's fine," Lisa reluctantly agreed. "You have to promise to call me when the date is over to make sure you're okay." Lisa piped up, "Getting the juicy details is just a bonus." Both girls laughed as they walked down the street. She told him to be at her apartment at 7 p.m. He was there at 6:45, but waited outside until 7 before entering her apartment. He didn't want to seem too impatient, even if he really couldn't wait to see her again. He knocked on the door and waited for it to open. Katie was standing at the stove stirring the sauce she had made for dinner when she heard the knock. She walked over to the mirror on the wall to check her outfit one last time and waited. She smiled when Tom knocked again. Outside, he wondered where she was. Had she changed her mind? Worry overcame him, and he knocked again. At the third knock, Katie smiled to herself again. Keeping guys waiting always took away her confidence. Katie called out, "I'll be right there." Tom breathed a sigh of relief as the door swung open and a smiling Kathy appeared in front of him. She invited him in, and he presented her with a bottle of wine and a small bouquet of flowers. She thanked him for the gifts and placed the flowers in a vase on the table where they would have dinner. He admired her beauty as she cut the stems of the flowers and placed them in the vase. She was wearing a white blouse, buttoned in the front with the top 3 buttons. The blouse was tucked into tight black jeans. She was barefoot. She looked so erotic walking barefoot in her tight jeans that Tom was suddenly overcome with desire for this woman he had only known for a few moments. Dinner was chicken cacciatore with spaghetti. This dish was prepared with her own homemade sauce. The food was delicious. He hadn't had a home-cooked meal in a long time. As delicious as the food was, the conversation was just as charming. They told each other about where they had been, what they had done, and where they wanted to go in the future. Tom learned that Katie had a college degree and a flair for creativity. She took art classes in college and was pretty good at painting watercolors. She has several works hanging in her small home. Kathy listened to stories of his military service, some of them picturesque enough to make Kathy wince. She could hear the pain in his voice, and it brought tears to her eyes. She learned that he wasn't a mechanic in a small store, but the owner of 3 stores in their town. He had contracts with one of the big rental car companies to maintain and repair their fleet. He had contracts with the U.S. government for such services, as well as the insurance company Kathy worked for, and others. It was the largest store, with 10 bays. One of them dealt in customizing only, and the other one she went into dealt in expensive late-model cars like Ferraris and Lamborghinis. It was his favorite store since he had opened it first. He had a small office in the back of the building where he did all the bookkeeping for all 3 stores. He was staying late to deal with the paperwork when she walked in. He usually locked up the store before he started work and didn't know why he forgot to do it that day. Tom told Kathy that he was very glad he had forgotten. He told her where he lived. He was proud of the 3-bedroom house he had bought on the outskirts of town 2 years ago. It seemed Kathy's hunch had turned out to be correct. They had dinner, drank wine, talked, drank more wine, played games, and drank even more. The evening was coming to an end, and Kathy took the bold step of asking Tom to stay just a little longer. He didn't quite understand what "a little longer" meant, but quickly came to a decision. Tom walked over to Kathy, hugged her, and then pulled away and said he couldn't stay. Katie whispered, "Don't you like me?" Tom replied, "Yes, Kathy, I do like you. In fact, I like you a lot. But I see something more in you. I know I've only known you for a short time, but I see our future. I want to get to know you better. I want to take things slow so we both realize what we're getting into. I don't want a sexual relationship to complicate things. Besides, the anticipation will only make things better if we do decide to take things to the next level. Do you understand?" Katie had never gotten rejection before, but this didn't feel like a rejection. It was a promise of something more. It was a chance at something solid and real. For the first time in a long time, she felt good with a man. This man knew what he wanted, and she was sure he wanted her. He wanted to make sure she wanted him. She made up her mind and told him, "Not many men who turn me down get a second chance. However, you could be the one who gets a second chance. And just so you know, I understand," she added. That night, Tom returned home and went to bed. He tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. All he could think about was the beautiful woman he had turned down tonight. His thoughts were busy with visions of what they could be doing right now. He was tossing and turning and thinking what a fool he'd have to be to turn her down. Sleep didn't come for a long time. Kathy got dressed to go to bed, but first she had to fulfill a promise she had made to Lisa. Katie told Lisa about the evening they had spent and what they had in common. Katie then admitted, "I kind of asked him to stay." "You asked him to stay? Are you out of your mind? You just met him today," Lisa exclaimed. Kathy groaned. Don't worry, he turned me down. Lisa was more shocked that he said no. Lisa joked, he must be gay. Katie laughed. Judging by the goodnight kiss he gave me, no. I can definitely confirm that he's not gay. Tom was tossing and turning and Kathy slept like a baby. She didn't feel alone. She felt like he was right there with her. In a way, he was. Somehow he had gotten into her heart. It was 4 months before Tom realized he was in love with Kathy. She became convinced much sooner. A year later, Tom and Kathy were married. It was a small service with only a few friends and family in attendance. They moved into Tom's house on Kensington Street and began their life together. The disc stopped playing. Kathy didn't seem to notice it. She was too immersed in pleasant memories. She removed the disc and put it in the case along with the card. She went around to the next 2 white cases and picked up the gold one. The gold and silver cases were special. They held the fondest memories for her. She opened the box and took out a CD and a card. She received this box the morning of her wedding day. Along with her bridesmaids, Katie was getting ready for the big day. The doorbell rang and one of the bridesmaids opened the door. It was a FedEx courier delivering a gold box. She took it to Katie. They searched until they found a guest with a small portable CD player. They watched as she opened the gold box and inserted a CD into it. Kathy started reading the card and then pressed the play button. An old tune by the band Times called So Much in Love played. Soon Kathy read the lines on the card. When we walk down the aisle together, we'll vow to be together till the day we die. We love each other so much. We just can't wait to say I do. So in love, so in love. Tears came to Katie's eyes as Lisa started to yell, Don't start crying, it'll ruin your makeup. Lisa waved her hands in front of Katie's face, blowing cool air in her face. One of the bridesmaids muttered, With a card and song like that, if you can't walk down the aisle, I don't mind filling in for you. Katie snorted. Don't even think about it. I'll definitely make it to the altar. I don't know why I made you a bridesmaid in the first place. Everyone started laughing at this, and a makeup crisis was averted. When Katie got to the church just before the bride's procession started, she looked inside and saw Tom standing at the altar talking to his best man. He looked so good in his tuxedo. She was overwhelmed with pride in her man and wondered how she had ever been so lucky. She vowed to do everything she could to make him as happy as possible. Katie smiled, remembering her feelings before the wedding. Then the smile faded as she realized how badly she had let Tom down. She definitely hadn't kept the promise she had made. She shook her head slowly, perplexed at how she could have hurt him so badly. What should have been a beautiful memory was no longer. Katie quickly put the card and CD back into the gold box and set it back in its place in the row of boxes. Kathy's gaze stopped at the next 2 white boxes and moved to the first of the silver boxes. She opened the box and read the words written inside. She inserted the disc into the record player, and Frank Sinatra's smooth voice filled the room. She remembered Tom coming home from work on their first wedding anniversary. She had been preparing all day. First, she went to the salon to get her hair and nails done. Katie also got a Brazilian waxing. He kept urging her to get this procedure done. The waxing was supposed to be his anniversary present to her. He hinted to her that he would love her baldness. Now, she heard him walk into the house and called out to her. She reached the top of the stairs and was still putting on her earrings when he appeared from around the corner. She managed to take 2 steps down the stairs before he saw her. He froze in place and stared at her with his mouth open. When she was halfway down the stairs, he dropped the silver box and a card and a CD spilled out. He watched, mesmerized, as she walked down the stairs. He didn't move from his spot until she was on the last step. Remembering the silver box, he knelt down and picked up its scattered contents from the floor, then kneeled down and looked up at her. When he stood in front of her, she saw that he held the silver box in his left hand and the jewelry box in his right. He led her over to the couch where they sat down. He held out the jewelry box to her, watched her open it, and said, "Happy anniversary, my love." When she opened the jewelry box, she squealed with delight when she saw a 16-inch diamond necklace. She pulled out the necklace and asked him to put it on her. When he finished, she stood up, walked to the mirror in her room, and looked at herself, turning left and right. It was the most beautiful gift she had ever received. Turning around, she saw her husband looking at her with joy. Nothing gave him more pleasure than making her happy. Seeing her like this made his heart overflow with joy. Opening the box, he pulled out a CD and inserted it into the player. "May I have this dance, beautiful lady?" Taking her hands in his, he brightened. "This is the most appropriate gift I've ever given you. You are so beautiful tonight." Frank Sinatra's "The Way You Look Tonight" played on the record player, just as it did today in Kathy's bedroom. "Someday when I'm going to feel awful bad, when the world is cold, I'll shine thinking about you and the way you look tonight. Yes, you're beautiful. Your smile is so warm and your cheeks are so soft. All I can do is love you and the way you look tonight." They danced quietly in each other's arms, basking in the glow of the love they felt for each other. When the song ended, Tom turned to Kathy. "Why don't we just skip dinner and retire to the bedroom?" Kathy replied, "No way, buddy. I've spent a lot of time and your money getting ready for this night and we're leaving." Tom offered again. "Honey, all I want is you, and to hell with dinner." "We can eat afterward," Kathy replied. "Didn't you tell me once that it's better to wait and let the anticipation build up? Then everything will be better?" Kathy smirked. Tom muttered, "No, I'm not always right about anticipation." Kathy laughed. "No, you were right, and waiting until tonight when we go out would be the right thing to do too." Tom laughed. He knew he was going to lose this fight, and fighting with his beautiful wife was the last thing he wanted to do tonight. Tom told Kathy his plans for the evening in advance, and she made sure they did everything he had planned. First, they had a delicious dinner at an expensive Japanese steakhouse. After dinner, they went to a local comedy club and held out until the end of the two comedians' show. Then, they went to a small piano bar where they danced, drank, and had heartfelt conversations. On the way home, they couldn't tear themselves away from each other. They both realized that the anticipation had really worked. Katie smiled again at the memory. They had spent most of that night making sweet, tender love. That night had become Kathy's favorite memory during her marriage to Tom. It was the perfect night. Kathy got up and walked over to the jewelry box. She opened it and pulled out a diamond choker. It meant so much to her that night. She took the necklace in her hands and brought it to her lips. A tear rolled down her cheek. Returning the necklace to the box, she walked over to the bed and put the card and disc back in its place in the row of boxes. She skipped the next white box and walked over to the second silver box. She inserted the disc into the record player, and Nat King Cole's satiny voice sang, "Unforgettable." She remembered the evening of her second wedding anniversary. It was Saturday, and he had to be away to run a small errand. Although she knew he had another appointment, she had other plans. She was waiting for him in the living room in a pale blue negligee. Beneath it, she was completely naked. When the front door opened, she suddenly thought she hoped Tom wouldn't bring her friend home with him while she stood practically naked in the living room. But she needn't have worried. Tom wasn't thinking about bringing home a friend tonight. Once again, she got the answer she was hoping for. Seeing her, Tom stopped to admire his wife. Kathy saw two boxes, one in each of Tom's hands, just like last year. He headed toward her, placing the boxes on the nightstand. As he reached for his wife, she placed her hands on his chest and gently pushed him away. A questioning expression appeared on his face when she did so. Kathy told him, "Boxes first, honey." Smiling, he went to get the boxes and turned to his wife again. He held out a jewelry box to her, and she opened it. It contained a diamond bracelet and earrings that matched the diamond necklace he had given her last year. "Honey, would you be a dear and put them on for me, please?" Katie giggled. "You have to give me another box." Tom held out a silver box to her. She opened it and handed him the disc. She didn't even bother to read the card, just handed him the disc to put in the player. When a beautiful King Cole's song came on, she grabbed Tom and kissed him. 2 hours later, they called for pizza delivery. For their wedding anniversary, they ordered pizza and wine. Tom brightened up. "This is even better than last year. It's the perfect meal after a hard workout." Katie seconded him. "Yes, it is. Maybe we could do the workout again. What do you say?" They repeated the workout and the pizza and wine dinner many more times in the months that followed. It wasn't until the next morning that Kathy read the postcard enclosed with the disc. On it, printed by Tom in block punch style, were the words he wanted her to remember. "Unforgettable in every way, and forever the way you'll always be. That's why, darling, it's incredible. That someone so unforgettable thinks I'm unforgettable too. Katie thought about that night. She thought about the pale blue negligee. It had gotten lost in the move and never showed up again. She wished she had it now. If she had it, there would be even more special memories of that night associated with it. She put the map and disc away. Now she walked over to the last white box before the blue boxes. Those horrible blue boxes. The blue boxes with the pain inside could wait. She would play with the last of the white boxes first. It was the last box before losing the innocence of marriage. For Tom, at least, but not for Katie. She was seeing another man. Not just anyone, but the man of her dreams, her first lover. Yes, John was back. It had been 5 months since their second wedding anniversary. That night, they shared their love for each other. What Tom didn't know was that his worst nightmare had become a reality. The man from Katie's fantasy was back. He'd been back for 2 months now. Since Dr. Williams was starting a practice and needed insurance. He walked into the office and was talking to another employee when Kathy walked by. John noticed her first and called out to her. "Kathy, is that you?" Kathy turned and looked at John and her heart shook. All the old feelings had returned. It seemed like he had never left. "John, when did you get back?" she exclaimed. John stood up and hugged Kathy tightly, and she reciprocated. John said to her, "You haven't changed since high school. You're still the same beautiful woman. Yes, you've gotten even more beautiful if that's possible." He smiled and suggested, "Why don't we have lunch and reminisce about old times?" Kathy happily replied, "I'd love to. Let me go to my table and get my purse." They walked away hand in hand. She didn't notice the disapproving looks that most of the other women in the office threw at her. They all noticed that she seemed to be swooning over this guy. All thoughts of her husband faded away. If only Kathy could see what they saw. They saw that trouble was waiting for them. They had gotten to know Tom over the past 3 years, and they all liked him. Many were jealous of what Kathy had and wanted it themselves. They watched the developments. One of those women was Grace. If Kathy messed things up, she wouldn't be upset about replacing Kathy in Tom's life. She would wait and see what happened next. Grace, on the other hand, felt that if Kathy messed up, she would gladly take her place. Katie willingly went to lunch with John. She told herself it was just a reunion with an old friend. But in the back of her mind, she realized that if John started courting her, she would leave with him. She would betray her marriage and her husband without a second thought. The fantasy of John she had created in her mind was too tempting to resist. She wouldn't admit it even to herself, but she knew it nonetheless. When Kathy returned from lunch with John, her friend Lisa met her, escorted her to the ladies' room, and closed the door. Lisa bluntly asked her friend, "What are you, a married woman, doing with this handsome man?" Kathy stammered, "It was just lunch with an old high school friend, nothing more." Lisa wasn't so sure. The gossip started as soon as you left the office, and some of the things that were said you wouldn't have liked. Everyone figured it wasn't just lunch with an old friend. Kathy assured Lisa, It was. It was nothing more than lunch with a classmate." Lisa was relieved. Kathy was her best friend, and she had helped her through a difficult time with a former lover who had left her. Tom was the first man to treat her like a queen, and she knew he would never hurt her. Lisa said to Kathy, "If you were smart, you wouldn't let yourself have any feelings for this guy. What's his name?" she asked. Kathy embarrassedly replied, "He's John Williams." Lisa exploded. "The same John Williams who cheated on you and then dumped you years ago without saying a word? Is that the guy you went to lunch with? You told me that if you saw him again, you'd punch him in the face instead of hugging and kissing him." Katie growled, "I didn't kiss him." Lisa grinned. "You're a liar. I was looking out the window when you came back and I saw you press your lips to his ass. You saw him once, and now you're lying to me?" Next, Katie took a seat on one of the padded chairs in the women's restroom. "I'm sorry I lied to you. I couldn't help myself. He awakened in me the desire I've always had for him," Kathy sympathized. Lisa replied, "You're going to ruin your marriage if you don't stop this immediately. I am your best friend and will support you in almost anything. However, I will not support you in one thing." Katie said to Lisa, I know you're right. I promise I won't do anything to jeopardize my marriage." This statement reassured Lisa, but she still doubted that she would actually follow her advice. Unfortunately, Kathy didn't have the strength to overcome her idea of a chivalrous John Williams. Lisa decided she had done all she could and said, "Let's get back to work." For the first few weeks, it was lunches and pleasant conversations, nothing more. Soon they started having drinks after work if Tom had to stay late. This was followed by several weeks of date nights with drinks. John had a relaxed demeanor. He didn't rush things. He wanted Kathy back. He wasn't sure if what he felt was love. He wasn't in a hurry. He was sure he would soon be dancing the horizontal mambo with Kathy. If love came out of it, good. If not, it would be a pleasant interlude until something better came along. The fact that she was married meant nothing to him. She wasn't sure she would have been able to follow through if Tom hadn't had to go to Pittsburgh for practice. This wasn't just a training session. It was a chance to meet people in the industry, socialize a bit, and make new acquaintances. It was good business. Tom asked Kathy to go with him, but she said she couldn't take the time off. She could see he was disappointed, but she understood him. Did she really not want to go on purpose? Was this an excuse to see John? She didn't want to admit it, but that was the reason. While Tom was away, John and Kathy could catch up on their lives. The conference was to last 5 days. It would start Monday morning and end Friday night. Tom would leave Sunday at noon and return home Saturday at 3 p.m. Thus, the two lovers would have 5 days and 6 nights to do whatever the two adults wanted to do. Not knowing that Tom would be on vacation, Kathy took advantage of the 5 days a week he would be gone to spend more time with John. The betrayal was complete. All that was left was to get on with life. As soon as the computer confirmed that Tom's flight had left the airport, Kathy called John and asked him to come to the Kensington Street house to complete the betrayal of her marriage. John did indeed spend 6 nights and 5 days in Tom's bed. He also spent most of that time in Tom's wife's bed. John had become an accomplished lover. Having been a serial womanizer, he became a predator. The wine-filled nights confused Kathy. By Friday evening, John's seduction and conquest of Kathy was complete. Of course, Kathy's infidelity began the day John walked into the insurance agency office. It only took him 5 days to win Kathy's heart, whereas it took Tom months. Of course, John had gotten his way with help, while Tom had not. By Saturday morning, Kathy planned to leave Tom to be with John. In 2 weeks, John was scheduled to close on the sale of his new home. He was living in a small hotel room until the closing. Kathy was to live with Tom until closing. John left at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. An hour later, someone knocked on the front door. Kathy opened it, but it was a local florist with a large bouquet of flowers. The flowers were accompanied by a white box. Tom must have planned it a week before the wedding. Kathy tipped the driver and sent him on his way. Opening the box, she pulled out a card and a CD. She inserted the disc into the player and was surprised to find it playing a country-style tune. This wasn't the first time Tom had sent her country-style songs in boxes. However, as she listened to the music, she realized that the song was perfect. It was a song called 6 Days on the Road. It began like this: I left Pittsburgh, rolling down the East Coast. And it ends like this: well, my car's a little old, but that doesn't mean it's slow. My hometowns are coming up. If you think I'm happy, you're right. 6 days on the road, and I'm gonna make it home tonight. Katie was perplexed as to how the hell he had found that disc. She knew he would be happy to be home with her again. She knew he would immediately want to entertain himself. Kathy hoped that she could pull all of this off without letting Tom know. She hoped she could keep it a secret for 2 weeks. The limo pulled into the driveway at 4 p.m., 6 hours after she'd gotten the flowers. Tom got out of the car, paid, tipped the driver, and set the suitcases on the porch. Tom was looking forward to seeing his wife. What surprise would she give him when he entered the house? Would she be wearing a new negligee, some slutty outfit, or maybe no outfit at all? The images of his wife dancing in his head were beyond him. The anticipation worked magic on him again. He opened the door and was surprised to see Kathy sitting on the couch in the living room. She stood up and walked over to him for a kiss and a hug. Such a welcome he had not expected. He tried to talk his wife into going to the bedroom to diffuse 6 days of desire. I'm already tired, maybe tonight, okay? Kathy suggested. Maybe tonight? What the hell was going on? Who was this woman and what had she done to my wife? Dejected, he went out onto the porch to drop off his suitcases. Finding nothing better to do, he put all the dirty clothes in a basket, put away the toiletries, and stashed the suitcases in the attic. Finished, he went to the kitchen where Kathy was cooking dinner. Walking up to her, he put his arm around her waist. She pulled away from him with the words, "Not now. Can't you see I'm trying to cook? Just leave me alone." A rejected Tom walked out of the kitchen and sat down in the living room. He reflected on how his wife had changed and was not happy with his thoughts. This was no longer the same woman he had left last Sunday. Something had happened on the trip and she didn't seem to want to talk about it. There was trouble brewing. There was no telling what it was. Katie was worried. She realized she wasn't doing a very good job of keeping things the same. Katie felt guilty as hell. She couldn't look him in the eye, much less kiss and hug him. Katie knew things were going wrong, and when she sneaked a peek into the living room and saw her husband looking out the window, she realized that she had ruined everything. She knew from his gesture that he suspected something, but Kathy didn't know what to do. After dinner, he practically dragged her by force into the bedroom. When they were done, he leaned back in his chair and just stared at her. She turned away and cried. Tom got up, showered, got dressed, and left the house. He didn't return until Sunday night. When he returned, Kathy asked, "Where did you spend the night?" "I had some paperwork to take care of, so I spent the night at the store." He snapped angrily. Kathy said, "I was worried. You didn't call?" He replied, "You don't have a phone? Are your fingers broken?" Nothing more was said between them that evening. Kathy put the disc away. She thought that maybe it should have been put in the blue box too. The reunion had gone horribly wrong. What could she have expected? She'd cheated on her husband, and she was ashamed as hell of it. Worse, she'd planned to leave him for another man, and now he suspected something. Katie picked up the first of the blue boxes. She hesitated before opening it. That's when the pain started. She opened the box and pulled out a CD. There was no card. Her deception had changed the tradition of boxes. She inserted the disc into the player and heard the beginning of a song. She remembered getting the box. On Monday, she came to work with an unusual bouquet of lavender flowers. Katie later learned that lavender is the flower of distrust. If any of the girls knew about it, they didn't say so. As usual, the girls got together to listen to the song he had sent her. Only this time, Katie wasn't sure she wanted the girls to hear the song. She had no idea what would be on the CD. The girls kept insisting that she put the song on, like she always did when the box came. Finally, she stopped resisting and put the disc in the player. A Bob Seger song came on. "I know it's late. I know you're tired. I know I'm not in your plans. All my hopes are gone. Now we've got everything. Let's make it last. Let's find a way. Why don't you stay?" The girls listened silently at first and then looked disapprovingly at Kathy. They had all seen Katie with John and were not surprised to hear that Tom had caught her. One of the older girls named Rose asked her, "Katie, what have you done?" Katie decided that what's done is done. She was going to leave Tom in 2 weeks and they would find out anyway. Why try to hide it now? She looked at them defiantly and said, "I'm leaving Tom in 2 weeks. I'm moving in with John, who I'm dating." "Is that what you wanted to hear?" Rose replied, "No, it's not what I wanted to hear, but it's what I expected. You may not realize it now, but I think you are making a huge mistake. Your husband is crazy about you. He's also one of the best men I know. I doubt the new man in your life will last long. You'd better stop before it's too late." "It might be too late anyway. You heard the CD, he already suspects something," Kathy said. "If he goes, it'll be your loss and some other girl's luck." Rose left with a shake of her head, and the rest of the girls began to go back to work as well. Only 2 girls remained. One was Grace and the other was her friend Lisa. Grace asked Katie, "Are you really going to leave Tom?" Katie angrily replied, "Yes." Grace only nodded, turned, and walked away. Lisa stayed behind, throwing daggers at Kathy. "You didn't take my advice. Don't come crying to me when everything goes to hell. I'm very disappointed in you. I was wondering why I haven't heard from you, why you haven't returned my calls." Lisa turned on her heels and walked away. Kathy realized she was angry, but she would come to her senses when she saw how good her relationship with John would be. Katie was sure she had made the right choice. Katie took the CD out of the player and put it away. She looked at the CD and the box again and thought about why she hadn't done what Lisa wanted her to do. In the evening, she came home and pounced on Tom criticizing the song. She yelled at him, "Why did you send me this? I'm your wife." "Really?" he hissed. "I thought you were more interested in someone else. On Saturday, it seemed to me you weren't my wife." The postcard and the disc were just in line with my thoughts. "You're wrong, Tom. You're just wrong." She hissed back. She knew she wasn't. She'd hit right on target. Why couldn't she just admit it? She had a chance to tell him the truth, but she hadn't taken it. Katie realized that subconsciously she didn't want to tell him. She didn't want the reality to be true. For the second time, she brushed away a tear. She put the box away. Katie's fingers ran over the lids of the boxes and stopped at the second blue box. She remembered when she had gotten that box. It was the day after she got the Bob Cigar song. She pulled up to the house on Kensington Street, and the box was on the porch opposite the front door. As soon as she saw it, she looked around to see if anyone was there. But she didn't see anyone. She quickly picked up the blue box and carried it into the house. She decided she had to play it before John got home. Opening the box, she saw the usual note inside and opened the folded paper to read it. Instead of the usual song lyrics, there was a short letter to Kathy. It began like this: "My love, I know you so well. Maybe even better than you know yourself. You were my gem, my diamond. I knew every facet and cut and angle. At least I thought I did. I looked deep into the middle of that diamond. It was like looking into your heart, your soul. I had never seen it, its imperfection. But now I see it. The song on the CD says what my mind thinks, and my heart screams that I must be wrong. If my mind is wrong, please call me out. I would get on my knees to ask, no, beg you for forgiveness. Like, if you don't forgive me, I will know. When I fell in love with you, I didn't see the flaws. Love dazzles and blind eyes can't see. I await your answer, my love. What will it be?" Katie's lips trembled, and she held back a tear. She put the CD into the record player, and Ronnie Millsap began to sing "Stranger in My House." I can't find love in her eyes. I'm beginning to realize I feel the presence of another man. She sits and stares out the window, a million miles away. Does she love him in her thoughts? As she lies here in my bed, there's a stranger in my house. Someone is trying to take her away from me. Of course, Katie didn't call. Once again, Tom and the song were right. Kathy was stunned that he could see the situation so clearly. Why couldn't Tom realize that she didn't mean to hurt him, but was just in love with another man? Perhaps she should have told him that right away. Katie realized that she had never told him the truth. Why? It was a question she didn't want to answer even to herself. Maybe extraneous thoughts had crept into her head. Impossible. Katie pushed the thought out of her mind. No one would call Tom. A cheating wife couldn't tell him he was right in his suspicions. Kathy picked up the third blue box. In some ways, it was the worst box. Tom began to spend more nights at the office. He would come home one night or the next. Because of the uncertainty of Tom's actions, Kathy and John couldn't see each other for a whole week. They decided to take a chance that Tom would not be home on Friday night. Kathy drove by the store located near her work. Ironically, it was where Tom had taken up residence when he didn't come home. At 7 o'clock that evening, she pulled up to the store and his car was parked there. Deciding that he wasn't coming home again tonight, Katie called John on his cell phone. She told him that the all clear was clear and for him to wait for her at the house. Kathy didn't realize that Tom was already coming home. He was looking for the right song to put on a CD. He was also writing a handwritten card. He wanted to talk to Kathy and try to save their marriage. Tom realized that something was wrong. He thought she was seeing someone else. After all, she hadn't called like he asked if he was wrong. However, he only had suspicions, nothing serious. Tonight, he would talk to her and try to stay together. It wasn't until 8:30 that Tom left the store. It took him half an hour to drive across town to his house. As he turned onto his street, Tom saw a strange car parked in front of his house. As wary as Tom was, the strange car made him wary. Tom was terrified of what he might discover, but he had to know. He drove 5 houses past his house and parked on the street. Tom walked to the front door, carrying a bouquet of flowers in a white box. He tried the doorknob. It was locked. He quietly inserted the key into the lock and turned the knob again. The door opened and Tom slowly stepped inside. As he walked through the house, he heard nothing until he was at the foot of the stairs. The same staircase that his wife had walked down in a little black dress on the night of their first anniversary. He thought of how beautiful she had looked that night, and the memory made him smile, until he heard voices and what he thought was the movement of the bed. His mood turned black and cold. The smile disappeared from his face. Tom walked up the stairs, carefully stepping around the creaky fifth step. When he reached the bedroom door, the house was cool, but sweat trickled down his face. Tom slowly opened the door and his worst fears were realized. On the marital bed lay his wife with another man. They were in the missionary position, and he could see the man going in and out of his wife. Tom recognized him immediately. He had seen pictures of the man in her high school yearbook. Kathy had told him about how they had met, and that he had taken her virginity. This man was her first love. It was John Williams. Tears came to his eyes, his heart was breaking. This knowledge was worse than he had anticipated. Tom knew he should go and beat the shit out of this asshole, but what was the point? He'd go to jail and his wife would testify against him at his trial. No, he'd just walk away and let events take their course. Tom walked back down the stairs, stumbling on the fifth step. It didn't matter, as the lovers were too engrossed in their occupation to hear. Tom left the flowers on the kitchen table, opened the box and snapped the disc in half, leaving it on the table with the flowers. He picked up the card. He left the house, slamming the door. Katie remembered what happened next. Katie whispered, "Did you hear that?" John impatiently replied, "I didn't hear anything." He wanted to continue making love. "No, I heard something." She pushed John away from her, put on her robe and went downstairs. When she saw the flowers and the broken CD in the white box, a wistful feeling swept over her. The white box meant he was sorry and wanted her back. Now she was sure he knew. She didn't know if he had seen them or just heard them and left. She felt terrible. She had never meant to hurt Tom like this. Yes, she knew she would hurt him when she left, but not like this. Katie was troubled by her reaction. She was leaving him. What did she care about that? She had her own man. It was John. Tom's feelings shouldn't have mattered to her. It was confusing, but she put it out of her mind. Finally, John came down and saw the flowers. John thought Tom was a weakling for letting him take his wife away so easily and not fighting back. And this wuss is here, with flowers and a disc? How pathetic. Kathy really didn't think it was pathetic, but decided it wasn't worth arguing about. Tom didn't come back to the house for a whole week. John never left, practically taking up residence in the house. Katie woke up from her reverie and looked at the boxes in her suitcase. She wished she could have that broken disc in the white box right now. After all, if she had it, there would be no other blue boxes and no other black and red boxes. Kathy inserted the disc into the player and read the card. Roy Orbison's song, "Running Scared," started playing. Katie read the words on the card, neatly printed and pasted inside the card, already without its funny font that seemed so cute. Just running scared? I don't feel well. Running scared? You love him so much? Running scared? Afraid of losing him? If he came back, what would you choose? And suddenly, he was there. So confident with his head held high. My heart was breaking for you. Who would you choose? And you turned around and walked away with me. That's what Roy Orbison sang, but that's not what the card said. The last line on the card said, "Will you go with him or will you stay with me?" Kathy remembered how she had gotten that box. It had been delivered by courier on Monday morning. There were no flowers or gifts in the blue box. The girls, now even more curious than before, again crowded around Kathy's booth to listen to the CD. This time, Kathy refused to play the disc or read the card. She knew now that the blue box was not a good color. Apparently, the girls knew it too and begged her to put the disc down, but Kathy held firm. It wasn't until after work that she got into her Toyota, the same one that Tom had fixed that first night. Kathy started to open the box when she heard a knock on the window. It was her friend Lisa and an older woman named Rosa. Lisa asked, "Do you mind if we listen to the CD Tom sent you? We'll get in the car with you and just listen to the CD. We won't say anything, just offer support if you need it." Kathy admitted, "I could use some friends to listen to it with me. Do you promise not to judge me?" The girls shook their heads and Katie let them get into the car. The girls sat in silence, Lisa in the front and Katie and Rose in the back seat. Katie opened the box and hesitated for a few moments, then inserted the disc into the CD player and read the card. The girls listened silently as the disc played. She read the card and then passed it to the other women in the car. Lisa cried as she read the card and listened to the song. She knew he was pouring his heart out. He opened up to her, telling her about his fear of losing her to another man. In the card, he also told her that he would be returning to his home on Saturday morning. He let her know that she had to make a decision by then. At the end of the card, he wrote, "I hope you choose me." Rose read the card and inquired, "Kathy, what are your plans?" Kathy replied, "I'm leaving with John on Saturday morning." Rose only nodded her head and remarked, "I wish I had a man who loved me enough to ask me to come back even when he was sure I had cheated on him." Katie replied, "Rose, haven't you been divorced twice?" "Of course you're right," Rose replied sadly. "But if I could go back in time, I would never have cheated on Chet, my first husband. I realized too late that he was the love of my life. I've never been happier since he left me." "That may be true, but I'm sure John is the man I'm destined to share my life with." Lisa thanked Kathy for sharing the contents of the box with them, and they vowed that they would never tell anyone about it. Katie thanked them for honoring her request for secrecy, and the ladies got out of the car. Kathy returned home and began to discuss what to do about John. "Leave and make him come home to an empty house," he suggested. "He'll realize he's lost you to a better man. That should put an end to it." Katie felt she couldn't do that to him and told John, "He's always been honest and fair with her. I've always been treated well, like someone special. I owe it to him to tell him everything face to face. If that's what you want to do it. Everything has to be finished by Saturday," he instructed Kathy. At 9:45 a.m., Kathy was sitting at the kitchen table. The last two bags stood by the door. She had packed the day before and moved all of her belongings to John's new place of residence. Promptly, at 10 in the morning, Tom walked through the door of his house. The first thing he saw was the packed suitcases and immediately realized that Kathy's decision was not his. Kathy saw a look of hope appear on his face, replaced by sadness. Ignoring her, he walked over to the refrigerator, pulled out a beer, unscrewed the lid, and tossed it in the sink. He sat down in the chair across from her and took a long sip from the bottle. "I guess you've answered the question," he said finally. Katie was puzzled. "What question?" she asked. Taking another sip of beer, he replied, "You're leaving with him and not staying with me." "Oh," was all she could reply. He took another sip and asked, "Do you love him?" "Yes." "Then it is useless to fight for you?" "No, I'm sorry, Tom," she whispered. He sipped more from the bottle and set it on the table. Without looking at her, he said, "I think it's time for you to get out of my house." Katie was shocked by his words. He had never swore at her before. "Will you help me take things outside?" Tom brought the bottle to his lips, finally finished his beer, and slammed it down on the table again. "It's your decision to go. Carry your damn bags yourself." Once again, shocked by his words, Katie carried first one, then the second bag to the porch. Once outside, Kathy texted John to pick her up. She wasn't happy with the way things had gone. She wanted to try to explain what had happened and how she felt. She wanted to tell him that she still loved him, but not the way she loved John. She wanted to be kind, but Tom had other thoughts. If she didn't want him, then she should leave. It was so easy for him, she thought. But how could she blame him? Katie looked at the house she had lived in for over 3 years. Those had been happy years. She thought she heard some noise coming from the kitchen and went to look out the window. She was horrified to see Tom sitting in a chair with his back to her. His body was shaking with silent sobs. She was shocked to see her strong husband crying like a baby. She made the mistake of bringing her hand to the window when his wedding ring clinked against the glass, and he turned to look at her. Once outside, he grabbed her left hand and quickly removed the wedding ring from her finger. Without saying a word, he walked back into the house and threw them on the table. They bounced off the tabletop and fell to the floor. Tom didn't make the slightest effort to pick them up. Kathy watched him through the window. He walked over to the window, looking at her eye to eye, and slowly closed the blinds. His eyes did not take his eyes off hers until the blinds were completely closed. Katie had never seen such a hateful look from anyone before. For the first time, she was afraid for her husband. She was also afraid for John. John thought Tom was a weakling. She knew, or thought she knew until today, that Tom would never hurt her. But she wasn't sure what he could do to John. She was under no illusions. She knew that her soon-to-be ex-husband would not be easily defeated in a fight. Finally, John pulled up in front of a quaint house on Kensington Street. Carrying his bags off the porch, he loudly insulted Tom inside the house. As they pulled away from the house, Katie was relieved that Tom hadn't left the house to meet John. She had hoped that they could part as friends, but that was not to be. Putting the unpleasant confrontation in the past, Kathy was happy. She was with her long-lost love. Now they would start a new life together. She would do everything she could to make him happy. Kathy put the disc in the blue box along with the card and returned it to its place in the case. She thought it was ironic. She told Tom the same thing she had just thought about John. She had done everything she could to make him happy. But she hadn't succeeded. She pulled the next blue box out of the case and looked inside. This box she remembered painfully familiar. She knew what song it was because there was no card in it. When she pulled the CD out of the box, she immediately remembered Tom's cousin Janice and her wedding day. Kathy was chatting with her girlfriends when Janice walked up to her. Janice looked Kathy straight in the eye and asked, "Do you really love my cousin?" Kathy assured Janice, "Yes, I do. I love him very much." "I hope you mean it," Janice warned. "I don't want Tom to get hurt anymore." Katie asked why she was so worried. Janice briefly told Kathy about Tom's childhood. Tom's mother died of stomach cancer when he was 7 years old. His father became addicted to alcohol and died of sclerosis of the liver when he was 12. He was taken in by my family. My mom is his aunt, his mother's sister. For some reason, my father didn't want to take on the responsibility of raising Tom. But my mother insisted that only family should raise her sisters. As a result, Tom always felt unwanted by his father, a burden to the family. In high school, Tom had trouble with girls and was constantly skipping extracurricular activities. He was literally a lone wolf with no friends. The only thing that saved him was that he was a tough guy. He was willing to fight anyone at the first opportunity, and usually won. Although it didn't make him any friends, most left him alone. It didn't bother me that he was my older brother. Mentioning his name in a conversation with any bully usually ended in trouble. "Did you see all the scars on Tom's body?" inquired Kathy. Tom had never talked about how he got those scars. Kathy replied, "I have seen them. He told me they were from a bullet, shrapnel, and on the left side of his body from a knife cut. All the scars were received by him in the army except the knife cut. He got it while defending her in a bar from 2 drunken bikers." Kathy had never heard of it. She needed to know what had happened, and Janice was happy to tell her about it. Tom was home on vacation after his first deployment to Iraq. She went to the Dewdrop Inn, one of the local bars in town that was frequented by the rough crowd, bikers and truckers. Why Angie wanted to go there in particular is still a mystery to me. Tom was there, drinking beer with 2 army buddies who came with him on vacation. I didn't see him when we walked in. Angie and I were sitting at a table when 2 obnoxious guys asked us to dance. One was a big guy with short hair and wearing a black biker jacket. The other was smaller with messy, disheveled dark hair. I can still see them as if it happened yesterday. We told them no thanks, but they didn't take no for an answer. The dirty-haired guy got upset and started calling us whores and teasing us. The bigger one grabbed my arm and tried to pull me out of the stall. Tom came out of nowhere and pushed the big guy away from me. The big guy took a swing at Tom and missed, then Tom started punching him until he fell. Thanks to that Kathy, Tom became my favorite cousin. Who knows what could have happened if he wasn't around? I care about him a lot. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. If you hurt him, you'll have to deal with me." Katie was surprised to learn of her future husband's abusive past. He had always been kind and gentle with her. She felt calmer knowing that he was a man who could protect her if necessary. Kathy reassured Janice again. "After I found out how protective he was of you, I think I love him even more now. I promise you that I will never hurt him." Katie thought regretfully that this was another promise she hadn't kept. Kathy remembered the day the box had arrived at her office. She had received it by FedEx Messenger the Monday after Saturday's run-in. There were no flowers in it, She figured he had decided she no longer deserved flowers from him. She also refused to put on the girls' CD and turned it on to Lisa and Rosa in the car after work. Lisa and Rosa wanted to know the meaning of the song, since it didn't include a card. Kathy told the girls about her younger years, the death of her family members, and how she had not received love and acceptance until she met Kathy. Now, years later, she realized that she didn't understand the meaning of the song when she first heard it. She just thought it meant that he loved her more than she loved him. She hadn't shed a tear listening to the song when she first turned it on in the car. Lisa and Rose didn't say anything to comfort her that day. They just got out of the car. When she put the disc in the player, the Bee Gees tune "To Love Somebody" played. There's a certain light, that never shone on me before. In my brain, I see your face again. I'm a man. Can't you see what I'm like? I live and breathe for you, but what good is that? If I don't have you, don't have you. Baby, you don't know what it is to love someone the way I love you. Tears flowed from Katie's eyes down her cheeks into her mouth. She could taste the bitter tears on her tongue. Now she understood the meaning of the song. She was the light. Tom wanted Kathy's love to illuminate him in a way it never had. Tom thought of Kathy as such a person. Kathy had stolen his love from him, perhaps the one thing Tom longed for more than anything else in the world. Kathy wished she could do it all over again. If only she had known then what she knew now, she would still be married to Tom. Now, she put the box back in the case and pulled out the last white box. The last white box she would ever get from him. The last white box before the black box. She remembered all too well when she got this box. She got this box the Friday after she got the Bee Gees CD. Kathy, Lisa, and Rose were walking out of the office building where they all worked. As they were walking towards the parking lot, they heard someone yell, "Kathy, wait!" They looked in the direction the sound had come from and saw Tom running down the street. Tom was dressed in his usual tight-fitting blue jeans, a blue short-sleeve shirt, and work boots. Kathy admitted to herself that he really looked good while jogging. Rose whispered to Kathy, "If he were mine, I don't think I could throw him back." Katie threw her a scornful look as he approached and started walking towards them. They all couldn't help but notice that he was holding a white box in his left hand. "Hi," he said. Katie watched him scrutinize her, starting at her knees and slowly rising to her eyes, where their gazes froze for a second. Reluctantly tearing his gaze away from Kathy, he turned to Rose and Lisa. He nodded, greeting them. The women nodded back in acknowledgement. He turned to Kathy again and said, "You look good." "Thank you," Kathy replied. An awkward silence followed. Finally, Tom spoke. "Kathy, I need to talk to you for a few minutes. Do you mind?" Kathy replied, "I don't know, Tom. I need to go home. John will be waiting for me." "I know," he said. "It will only take a few minutes. Surely you can spare 5 minutes for an old friend." When he said old friend and not ex-lover or spurned husband, she realized he didn't want to fight and decided to give him 5 minutes. Tom turned to the girls and said, "I want to talk to Kathy alone. I hope you don't mind." He started to walk Kathy to her car. Rose and Lisa followed right behind them. After walking a few feet, he noticed that they were following behind. Tom turned to look at them, and a small smile appeared on his face. "Okay, looks like I'm going to have to do this in your presence." He turned to Kathy and pronounced, "Please let me finish what I have to say without interrupting me. I have to say everything, and if you say anything, I won't be able to finish, okay?" Kathy nodded. Tom began, "I know I don't have a college degree. I don't speak well, it's my fault, and I know it. I've never been good at expressing my feelings openly. I probably didn't tell you often enough that I love you and how much you mean or meant to me. I tried to rely on songs and meaningful lyrics to let you know how much I loved you and even needed you. Obviously, I failed miserably. I loved you more than you will ever know. I was so happy with our life together. I guess the happiness blinded me, and I didn't notice your unhappiness. I am so sorry that I failed to notice it and did nothing to make things better. I want you to have this." He held out the box to her. "This is my last gift to you. Its importance to you is as great as it is to me. If you don't respond to the song, I won't bother you again. I will never come to your workplace or your new home. If I see you on the street, it will be completely random, I assure you. If your car breaks down, you can bring it in for repair. Smiling slightly, he said, "Of course, I'll charge you this time." Kathy, remembering their first meeting, smiled as well. "Well, I guess that's all I wanted to say." He started to back away, but then turned around. "There's one more thing. I want to thank you. We've had 3 wonderful years together, 3 of the best years of my life, and I will always remember them and think of you with love." Finally, Tom turned and addressed Rose and Lisa. "Ladies, you have shown me something today with your courage and dedication. I'm glad Kathy has friends like you. I know you will take care of her. I'm just surprised you think so badly of me. Do you really think I'd do anything to—" Tom's voice broke off at the word hurt, and it took him a second to recover. He continued, "That I would do anything to hurt her. Since this will probably be the last time we see each other, this will be our farewell. I wish you both the best, that you find what you're looking for in life, and that when you find it, you both get to keep it." At the word keep, Tom's voice trailed off again, but he was able to continue speaking without stopping. By now, Rose was openly crying and hugging Tom tightly. Tom whispered in her ear, "If anyone tries to hurt or bother Katie, will you let me know?" When they broke the embrace, Rose, crying and smiling at the same time, shook her head in agreement and said she would let him know. He then hugged Lisa goodbye and asked her the same question. She whispered, "I will." Tom turned and walked away without once looking back at the girls. He knew he couldn't. They would see the tears in his eyes. The girls watched Kathy's husband walk away. Rose turned to Kathy and said, "If you let him go after that, then John must be decent." Lisa only shook her head. In the few times she had dated John, Lisa had thought he was a complete cretin. Lisa tried very hard, but she couldn't see what Kathy saw. She thought that Kathy was making a mistake and one day told her so. Kathy was so upset that it almost ruined their friendship. Lisa didn't talk about it much after that. Once again, the three of them got into Kathy's car to listen to a CD. Once again, there was no card or note attached to the CD. Kathy picked up the CD and hesitated before inserting it into the player. Kathy looked at Rose, then at Lisa, and asked, "Should I listen to it?" Lisa replied, "Suit yourself. I'm not going to get involved in this case." Rose said, "After he revealed his innermost feelings, you owe it to yourself to listen to the song. You owe him at least that much." Katie thought about it, curiosity taking over, and she slid the disc into the player slot. The sounds of the Beatles ballad, "That Boy," came softly from the speakers. Tom thought it captured the situation just right. Someone had stolen his wife Kathy from him. John undoubtedly wanted her, but he didn't love her the way Tom loved Kathy. Even if Kathy had hurt him badly, Tom would still take her back. He wanted her to know that. Even if Tom was unfair, he loved Kathy and was willing to endure pain, any pain, to get the woman he loved back. Tom was also sure that John would eventually hurt Kathy. He had met people like him before. John was a user. He used Kathy and then dumped her when he got bored with her. Kathy listened to the haunting words of the song and realized that Tom and the Beatles were prophets. That boy took my love. Eventually, she realized that John was really sorry about that. He wasn't good for her and I made her cry. That day in the car, Kathy didn't understand or believe the words the Beatles were singing. By relying on the songs, Tom once again failed to achieve his goal. Kathy didn't mess with Tom. As she placed the Beatles record in its place in the row, she was reminded that she had already heard those words spoken to her by Tom. Embarrassed that she had forgotten, she reached into the drawer of the box. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the box. They stopped at the first white box. Katie closed her eyes, feeling shame spill over her face. He told her what he was doing with the first box he gave her. She remembered the day she received it. Kathy and Lisa were on their way to the mall. It was a Sunday morning. Tom was going to take Kathy on a picnic after lunch. Kathy wanted to buy some new clothes. Kathy was driving when Lisa asked her a question. "So how's it going with your mechanic?" Joked Lisa. Kathy immediately got angry and replied, "He's not just a mechanic. He has his own business. You know that." "Calm down. I was just joking with you, so what's going on between you two?" Lisa asked. "He loves me. I know that for a fact," replied Katie. "And how do you know that?" Lisa inquired. Kathy replied, I can see it by the way his smile lights up when he sees me. My car has never worked so well. He brings it here all the time and has his guys working on it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. He just wants to see me. He's always waiting for me with lunch when I come over. God help someone if he picks on me while he's around. I've already broken up 2 fights. He takes me to places, treats me well, and cares for me a lot. He loves me. I just know it. He just hasn't told me that yet. Why? What's holding him back? Lisa asked. Kathy stopped at a stoplight and explained, Well, I think he's waiting for me to make the first move. He's a very shy guy around women, replied Kathy. Lisa looked at Kathy and asked, What about you? Do you love him? Honestly, I'm not sure. I think I do, but I'm just not sure, Katie replied. With a guy like Tom, being sure doesn't help. You have to be in love with a man before you can say you love him. So tell me the truth. Do you love him? Lisa asked. It took a while before Kathy answered. It's been so long since I felt anything like love for a man, not since John. Lisa had had enough of John Williams, and now she told Kathy that. I don't want to hear about John anymore. He deceived you. He left and never came back. Didn't even call or write. John may have felt lust for you, but not love. If he loved you, he would be here with you. You have a boyfriend who you think loves you, and he is here. Doesn't he tell you he loves you? Perhaps he feels that you don't love him enough and he doesn't want to make a commitment. If you want to keep him, you'd better make up your mind soon or you'll lose him, Lisa exclaimed. If you let him go, you'll be more sorry to lose Tom than John Williams, Lisa muttered to herself. Kathy thought about what Lisa had told her. She thought she loved Tom, but she still couldn't get John out of her mind. Still, she didn't want to lose Tom. She knew there was no one better for her and she could do a lot worse. Katie took her time getting ready for tonight's date. It was a picnic in River Park, named for the river that ran through it. Since it was in Florida, she always wore flip-flops. They had a great day in the park. Tom brought delicious food, 2 bottles of wine, and a blanket for them to spread out on. After the day was over, the happy couple returned to Katie's apartment. Tom said, Kathy, I'm sorry, honey, but I'm going to have to leave early today. Why so early? Kathy whined. We just got here. We can have some more wine and sit and talk. What do you say? I can't tonight, Tom complained reluctantly. I have a meeting with an Avis representative about providing roadside assistance for cars in the area. It could generate revenue from my business and maybe someday our business, baby. I've got to be ready. I'm going to need my wits tomorrow. There are too many numbers to memorize. I'm sorry, babe, but I have to go. Katie was chagrined but gave in. I know you have to go, honey. Will you call me tomorrow when the meeting is over? She asked. He walked over to her and kissed her. You can count on it, he replied huskily. After he left, Kathy changed into something more comfortable, a t-shirt and pants. As Katie lay watching TV, she was caught off guard by the doorbell ringing. Looking out the peephole, she saw Tom standing there and opened the door. She was pleasantly surprised. Did you forget something? She asked, panting. Yes, and it's you, he replied. He wrapped her in his arms again and kissed her. He took a step back and Kathy saw the thin white box for the first time. Tom held it in front of him for Kathy to examine. Tomorrow, I will meet with an influential representative of a potential business partner. I'll be able to talk to him as an equal, say what I think, and have no problem listening to his answers. You, on the other hand, I have a bigger problem. Kathy, for some reason I can't express myself the way I'd like to. Liam stammered. Then he handed her the box and said, I hope this shows how I feel about you. Call me anytime. Kathy took the box and Tom left the apartment. Kathy was puzzled by his action. She went to the window and watched him drive away, then opened the box. Inside was a CD and a note. Katie remembered that night as if it were yesterday. She inserted the CD into the record player and read the note again, just as she had that night. A Randy Travis song played on the turntable. When you meet the one person, the one you've been looking for, in all the time we've spent together, I've learned to trust you. That completes the perfect union between a woman and a man. So please don't misunderstand me that I don't want to go too far. Without knowing any of the answers, can I trust you with my heart? The only thing written in the note was the line, can I trust you with my heart? That night, Kathy thought for a while and then called Tom on his cell phone. When he answered the phone, all she said was, "Yes." Tom asked, "What?" Kathy replied, "You can trust me with your heart. I'll be right back," yelled Tom into the phone. Kathy was waiting in the hallway when Tom ran up the stairs. He picked her up in his arms and carried her into the apartment, slamming the door shut with his foot. His voice shook as he spoke to her. "I love you, Katie. I love you like I've never loved another person on this earth." "I feel the same way about you," Katie replied. That night, they made love for the first time. Tom didn't even notice that Kathy didn't even utter the words, "I love you too." Thinking back to that night, Kathy cried. She realized too late that she really did love him. Maybe she had loved him from the first time she saw him in the repair shop. But now, it was too late. Katie set aside the white box and pulled out the black one. She reflected on the events that had led her to get the black box. It had been 3 weeks since she had spoken to Tom before work. True to her word, Kathy hadn't seen or heard from him since then. Friday morning, John was just about to leave for work when he asked Kathy, "Would you like to go out to eat after work today? How about Kelly's downtown?" He suggested. Kathy knew it was a place she and Tom went to often. "No," Kathy snapped back. "You know Tom and I used to go there a lot. I'm not going to go where I might run into him." "If not there, I heard about a new bar and grill that opened up a few blocks from where you work. I can drive you to work and then pick you up at 5. I'll be waiting for you outside the office. What do you say?" John asked. Kathy thought for a moment and joked, "Sounds like fun." John was already waiting for her and drove her to a new place called Easton Ave. The pub was apparently named after the street it was on. Katie was puzzled to see the contemptuous expression on the faces of the waitress and bartender as they entered. They sat down in a booth against the back wall at the back of the establishment. The waitress walked over and handed them menus and water. She soon returned to take the drink order. While the waitress was taking the order, Kathy heard the door to the pub open. She looked out to see who was there and was shocked to see her ex-husband walk in and sit at the bar. She heard him order the customary gin and tonic. She looked at John and asked him, "Did you know he was coming?" John replied with a smirk, "No, of course not." Katie immediately realized he was lying, but didn't know what to do. Before she could say anything else, John announced to her, "I need to use the restroom," and he got up from his chair and headed for the bar. He asked the bartender where the restroom was, and he pointed to a large sign that read restrooms. Then John said, "Hey, buddy, I didn't see you sitting there." Kathy knew that was a lie too and pointed it out to Tom. Tom just looked at him, went back to his drink and took a sip. John walked over to Tom, put his hand on the back of his chair and smirked. "Don't feel so bad, she picked the best man and it wasn't you." Tom looked at him, and John looked at Kathy with a wide grin on his face. Tom looked over his shoulder and saw Kathy sitting up and looking at him. Tom turned to John again and said, "Yeah, she picked you." John laughed, patted Tom on the back and said, "That's right, she chose me over you," and walked out of the restroom. Kathy was horrified at what she had just witnessed. She knew Tom didn't deserve this. She couldn't take her eyes off her ex-husband. He brought the glass to his lips and finished the drink in one gulp. He went to pay and the bartender said it was on the house. Tom got up from his stool and walked over to Kathy. "That was low, Kathy, even for you. Did you get any pleasure out of seeing me humiliated? I told you I wouldn't bother you again and I didn't. Do I understand now? You were made for each other." He said this to Kathy with an expression of disgust. Kathy replied to Tom, "I didn't know anything about that. You have to believe me. I didn't know you would be here and that he would do this. After what you did to me, why should I believe you? I don't trust you. I don't like him." Tom snapped back. John walked over to the table and grinned. "Are you still here?" Tom turned to John and just stared at him. She saw her soon-to-be ex-husband's hand clenched into a fist. Katie's thoughts went back to when they were a happily married couple. One night, Katie and Tom were playing fight and she hit him with her fist. He stopped her and told her not to put her thumb in her fingers. He explained that her thumb could break if she hit someone hard. She watched his thumb curl under her fist between the first and second knuckles of her left hand, exactly as he had taught her. They stood, pressed against each other, and Katie thought she saw a flicker of fear in John's eyes. A waitress came up with a Cosmo for Kathy and a beer for John and said, "This is no place for that, Tom." Without taking his eyes off John, he said, "Amanda, you're probably right." Tom backed away from John, not turning until he had moved a safe distance away, then turned and walked out of the pub. She didn't know it, but he was out of her life that night, too. John followed Tom to the exit and watched him leave. Amanda put the drinks on the table and said with disdain in her voice, "So you dumped Tom for that asshole? Do you know this is the third time he's done this to Tom?" She walked away with a shake of her head. When John returned to the table, he was visibly upset. "What did he talk to you about?" he demanded. Kathy was furious, but before she could say anything to John, a man approached the table. "I don't know if you remember me, but I was at your wedding with Tom." Kathy replied, "I'm sorry, but I don't remember you." "I'm a friend of Tom's, Paul. I was there with my wife, Phyllis. I gave Tom something during the meal," Kathy remembered. He, along with two of Tom's other friends, came up to the dais as we were eating fruit salad and put their cherries in Tom's cup, saying that at least now he would have a cherry tonight. Everyone had a good laugh at Tom's expense. Kathy laughed. "I remember. Cherries. How are you, Paul?" "I'm fine, Kathy." Then he turned to John and said, "I own this establishment. Tonight's meal is on the house. When you finish your meal, I want you to leave immediately. Neither of you can come back." Kathy's face turned crimson with embarrassment. John only laughed. Paul continued, "I want to warn you," looking directly at John. "Tom won't do anything that would cause trouble in my position. However, if he sees you anywhere again, run the other way. He won't be so gracious again." John grinned and commented, "I'm not afraid of a jerk like him." "Don't say you weren't warned," Paul replied and started to walk away, then turned, smiled, and said, "I hope I'll be around to see it." Kathy ate her food in silence. She was furious with John. She knew this was all a setup to humiliate Tom. The food was delicious, and it made her want to come back here again. She remembered talking to Paul and his wife. She had liked them immediately. She wished she could renew her relationship with them. After John's antics, she realized that wasn't going to happen. Besides, he hadn't left a tip. That night, Kathy and John had their first serious fight. John was just John. He was furious. He couldn't understand why she sided with this weakling. John just wanted to make sure her ex-husband knew who Katie belonged to. He was asserting his rights. He told Tom to stay away, although he doubted he could keep him at a distance if he needed to. At the moment, Katie was sure John couldn't, unless Tom wanted him to. With a mixture of sadness and relief, she realized that he was no longer interested in her. The sadness came from the realization that part of her life was definitely over. Tears flowed from her eyes at the memory of it. The pain that he felt, she felt as well. The memories were becoming very painful for her. Somehow she felt like she had to keep going through the boxes until she got to the last red box. A week later, Kathy was at work when she heard the door to the agency open. Kathy looked up to see who was there and, to her shock, saw Tom's cousin Janice. The same one she had told that she loved Tom and would never hurt him. Janice looked very professional. She was wearing a gray pinstripe business suit, a blazer skirt, and a white shirt. She approached Katie with an enraged expression on her face. In her left hand, she held an attaché case. "You don't know how to keep your promises, Kathy," she hissed. "I'm sorry, Janice, I didn't mean for this to happen, but it did," Kathy explained. Janice looked at the sign on her desk and picked it up. "Is that you? Are you still Kathy Holden?" Kathy replied, "Yes." "Good," Janice said. Put the attaché case on the desk, pulled out a white folder, and tossed it on the desk. "You have been served." Janice said it with obvious disdain. She then pulled out a black box, tossed it on top of the folder, and said loudly, "You stupid cheating bitch, you heard him. He's too good for you. You know that, don't you? His heart is broken. Don't worry. He'll find someone else to get his heart back. I know you'll drag your slutty ass to him one day. Maybe he'll take you back too. I hope he's already found someone else to take your place. By the way, you should listen to the CD. I did. It's beautiful. My cousin was always too good for you," Janice called out. Janice turned to leave when Kathy heard someone yell, "Wait!" She saw Grace get up and walk over to Janice. Grace was standing with her back to Kathy and facing Janice. They talked for a few seconds and Janice shook her head in agreement. She saw Grace holding something out to Janice. Janice looked at Kathy and a smile appeared on her face. She turned to Grace again, smiled again, and again shook her head in agreement. Janice turned to walk out the door and Kathy heard her laugh. Grace returned to her desk and Katie thought she had a smile on her face as well. Katie opened the box and pulled out a CD. There was no card this time and only Rose and Lisa came to listen to the CD. Lisa asked, "Do you want to listen to it now or wait until the end of the day in the car?" Kathy replied, "Janice said it was beautiful. Why not play it now?" She inserted the disc into the turntable on her desk and a Garth Brooks song came on. It was The Dance. And it was beautiful. Looking back, I remember the dance we shared under the stars. For a moment, I thought everything in the world was right. How was I to know that you would ever say goodbye? Holding you, I held everything in my hands. Wasn't I king for a moment? If only I knew how a king falls. Who knows, maybe I would have changed everything. And now I'm glad I didn't know. How it would end, how it would go. I could have skipped the pain. But I would have had to skip the dance. Rose and Lisa were openly crying, though Kathy wasn't crying. There were many pairs of misty eyes in the office. Most of the women liked Tom, and he said all the pain was worth the time spent with her. At the time, Kathy hadn't realized it. This time, Katie understood exactly what he was talking about in the song. It was painful to go through, but the pain was worth what he had. So why couldn't she understand it when it all happened? Kathy put the CD back in the box and tucked it away in its case. She would only see Tom one more time, already after the divorce was finalized. She took the papers to her lawyer. Everything was split 50-50 except his business. Tom didn't want to give her any of his business, but she didn't care. She was going to be a doctor's wife. Let him keep his business. She signed the papers. John and Kathy were married a month after the 6-month waiting period had expired. John's business was doing well. John hired 2 nurses, a receptionist, and an accountant. Kathy and John sold an apartment and bought a nice house in the same neighborhood as Tom's house, on Kensington Street, just a few blocks away. As John's practice grew, he began working late. Kathy was not happy but realized that patents came first for him. After all, as John told her, "I took the Hippocratic Oath. I'm supposed to treat patients." Besides, he grinned, they pay the bills. One Friday night, John's secretary called to inform Kathy that the doctor was running late and needed to see a few more patients before he left for the night. Kathy was disappointed. That night, she made chicken cacciatore with spaghetti for dinner for John. She decided to be a good wife, like in the show, pack dinner, and bring it to the office so he could have something good to eat. As she pulled up to the office, she was surprised to see only 2 cars in the parking lot. One of them belonged to Jones, and she didn't recognize the other. She got out of the car, grabbed a cacciatore, walked to the office door and tried to open it. To her surprise, the door was locked. That was okay after all, she had her own key. With one hand, she juggled her food, while the other dug through her purse looking for the keys. Finally, she found them, opened the door, and was about to ring the bell. Just then, she heard a noise from one of the exam rooms that made her heart drop. It wasn't a doctor talking to a patient, but the sounds of 2 people doing something. She turned the knob on the door and pushed it open. Katie couldn't believe what was happening in the room. There was an elderly, obviously bleached blonde woman lying on the examination table. John was having fun with her. Neither of them heard her enter. Kathy screamed, "What's going on here?" With those words, she threw the cacciatore at the copulating couple. Food flew both ways. Slamming the door, Kathy ran out of the office, started the car and began laughing at the sight of John and his new bimbo. Then another thought popped into her head. Kathy started the car and raced away. She didn't know what to do. She didn't feel like driving straight home. She called her friend Lisa's cell phone. Lisa was with the other girls who worked at the insurance agency at a bachelorette party. Katie told her that she had a fight with John and needed someone to talk to. Lisa told her that Rose was alone, and they were at the Easton Ave pub. Katie told Lisa that she was banned from that establishment. Kathy suggested they meet and talk outside the pub. The women replied, "I'll meet you outside." Kathy said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Lisa warned, "There's one more thing you should know. Tom is here with a girl." Kathy stammered. I don't care. I need to talk to you girls tonight. Okay, Kathy, we'll be waiting, Lisa replied. Kathy thought about Tom. What she had seen was the same thing he himself had seen in his house that horrible night. She now knew firsthand the pain and humiliation he must have felt. She turned to her best friends for comfort and support. She realized that by betraying Tom, she had become his best friend. Who should he have turned to for comfort and support? She knew the answer. No one. He had to endure this pain on his own. Kathy opened her car door to let Lisa and Rose in. Kathy was still sobbing softly as they entered the car. Lisa immediately wanted to know what was wrong. Katie could hardly speak. When she calmed down, she recounted what she had seen. I saw a 40-year-old bleached blonde woman on the exam table being serviced by my new husband, Kathy growled. Neither Lisa nor Rosa was surprised by Kathy's revelation. Both girls thought John was a jerk. They were more surprised that it had taken Katie so long to see for herself. They tried to support her, but they didn't want to give her the slack. Rose told her, "What goes around comes around." I know, Kathy cried. I used to do the same thing. Don't think I haven't thought about it already. I feel betrayed and humiliated by what John did. What he did to me. I never felt that way about what I did to Tom. Now I know the truth. Now I know the pain, the humiliation, the betrayal. To lose something you thought was special. To know that the one you love thinks so little of him. Now I know. Now I know. Lisa and Rosa looked at each other, and by mutual silent agreement no longer scolded Kathy. She was doing just fine on her own. Rosa asked Kathy, "What are you going to do next?" Kathy replied, "I don't know. I'm so confused." But after a few minutes, she quickly made a decision. "I'm going to go home to confront John. What he has done is unacceptable, and it has to stop," she said firmly. Lisa asked, "Do you want us to come with you?" Katie replied, "No, I have to do this on my own." The girls got out of the car and watched Katie drive away. They walked back to the pub and approached the bar where Tom was ordering drinks and saw them. A huge smile appeared on his face. "Rose, Lisa, it's so good to see you. How long has it been? Almost a year?" He hugged each of them. Neither Rose nor Lisa smiled and only lightly hugged him back. Tom, realizing their reactions weren't very friendly, pulled away. "I'm sorry," he apologized. "I didn't know it was like this. I'll go." Tom stepped back, perplexed. It seemed to him that the last time they had been together, he had left on a positive note. But on the other hand, he thought, they're Kathy's friends, so why shouldn't they be friendly with me? Lisa was the first to realize the sudden change in his attitude and exclaimed, "Tom, wait. It's not what you think. Please come back. We need to talk to you." Lisa and Rosa wanted to take Tom to a stall and talk to him. First, he said he had to consult with his dinner companion. He walked over to his companion and spoke to her. She looked at Lisa and Rose and spoke briefly to him again. Finally, she smiled at him and shook her head in agreement. Tom walked back to Lisa and Rosa's table and sat down. "What is the meaning of all this? Why are you guys giving me a hard time?" he asked in confusion. He waited for their answer. Rose replied, "It has nothing to do with you. We just got some bad news today." "Oh God, I never thought of that. Is there anything I can do to help?" Tom asked. Lisa replied, "There probably is, but I don't think you'd want to." "What? What are you talking about?" Tom asked. Tom leaned forward, putting his hands on the table and fully immersed in his work. Lisa said, "It has to do with Kathy." Tom pushed himself away from the desk and leaned back in his chair as if he had just heard the rattle of a rattlesnake. His demeanor changed instantly. "What's she got to do with it?" Tom asked warily. "She just caught John cheating tonight," whispered Lisa. His face said it all. At first, it was completely blank. Then, a small smile appeared on it, followed by a huge laugh. When he finished laughing, he leaned forward, shaking his head back and forth and said, Karma's a bitch." And then he looked at the women and asked, still chuckling, "Why are you telling me this? What does it have to do with me?" "Nothing," Rose replied. "We just wanted you to know why we came today." Tom's attitude changed again. "I'm sorry, girls, I drew the wrong conclusion. I should have known better. So where is she now?" he asked. Lisa replied. She went home to confront him. That's definitely a bad idea. Jones is a coward, but if pissed off, he won't hesitate to hurt a defenseless woman, Tom stated. Anger flashed in Rose's eyes. If he's a coward, why didn't you fight for her when you had the chance? She asked, smugly. Smugly, she asked. Tom sat back in his seat again, but this time without disgust. Finally, he leaned toward the girls again with an expression of deep sadness on his face. I asked her if she loved him. She answered that she did. She told me she didn't love me anymore. What else was there to fight for? If I beat the shit out of him, would that make her love me again? No, she'd hate me. So what's the point? I was in a lose-lose situation. She wouldn't have loved me anyway, and I could have gone to jail. Do you understand my reasoning now, Rose? Tom asks. Rose nodded her head in the affirmative, now embarrassed at that she had asked the question at all. Lisa asked, so what are you going to do? Tom was unfazed. He said, me? I'm not going to do anything. She's not my problem anymore. You can't say that. You loved her once, Lisa reminded him. That was a long time ago. People and things change, Tom objected. Rose spoke up. I know you, Tom. I've known you for 5 years. I've been talking to Paul about you. Are you surprised? Don't be surprised. You are very highly thought of here. I've overheard stories about you from your friends in this bar. You have a lot of friends, don't you? Even when you and some of them fought, if they needed something, you still helped. Katie was your best friend. Even if she hurt you badly, you still didn't abandon her. Maybe it was your upbringing, maybe it was your military background, but you never let people down. You won't change, Tom Holden. Not you, Rose replied. Rose had kept her eyes on Tom as she spoke. Now he was keeping his eyes on her as well. Rose, this is a family matter. It's something that should be decided in court. Honestly, there's no way I can resolve it. It seems to me that this is her just reward. Chickens come home, if you know what I mean. If she ever needs me, if I can help, you can count on me. What I told you both that day in the parking lot still stands. If anyone hurts her or tries to hurt her, I expect you to let me know. This doesn't fall into that category. He hurt her, but no less than she hurt me. Bottom line, ladies, I will stay out of her family squabbles. Maybe they can work it out. Maybe she will fight for this marriage, unlike what she did to me. Maybe he'll realize his mistake and won't do it again. Maybe she will forgive him. I don't know, but it's not for me to get involved in this, not now, insisted Tom. An awkward silence ensued. Tom was the first to break the silence, noting, ladies, it would be nice to see you under different circumstances. Hopefully, if we meet again, we can have a drink and a laugh. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get back to my date. Tom left the booth, and as he started to walk away, he turned around and confirmed, remember, if anything bad happens, please let me know. Both girls nodded in response. They watched him walk back to the table and sit down. His companion said something and he began to speak. There came a point in the conversation when he started smiling and giggling, and the girl put her fork away and obviously started scolding him. Lisa and Rose knew he had told her about the affair and started laughing at Katie's predicament, and then his companion got angry with him. Tom lowered his head and started nodding his head yes and no, but in the end he didn't know what to do and just sat there staring at his plate. When she finished, she placed her hand on his and smiled. You could read on her lips, I understand. Tom seemed to lose his appetite and pushed the food away. His companion had time to eat while he talked to Lisa and Rosa. He got the check and they left. Lisa and Rosa were left wondering how Kathy would behave when she returned home that evening and ran into John. They paid the bill and left the bar. Neither woman left in a good mood. On Monday and Tuesday, Kathy was called in sick. Lisa was concerned but didn't want to get involved. Like Tom, she considered it a family matter. Besides, she had already gotten burned once before by getting involved in Kathy's affair with John. It shouldn't happen again. She called John's office on Tuesday, but it was open for business and the doctor was on site. Apparently, they weren't sitting at home dealing with their problems. Lisa decided to call Kathy on her cell phone. Lisa left a message. Lisa was worried about Kathy and asked her to call her back. Kathy did not answer the call. Lisa and Rosa decided to go to Kathy's house if she didn't return to work on Wednesday. It was 9:05, and Lisa and Rosa were deciding what to do when they saw Kathy's car pull into the parking lot. Feeling greatly relieved, they went to their desks and got to work. When Kathy walked through the door, the women were horrified. Large sunglasses did not hide the bruises around Kathy's left eye. Heavy makeup on her right cheek indicated even more damage to her face. Lisa and Rose quickly took Katie into the ladies' room and closed the door. Lisa pulled the glasses off her face and aghast. Katie was stoically calm. Obviously, she was all tearful. Rose asked what happened. She started crying. It wasn't all tears. Finally, Kathy stopped and told the women what had happened. When she arrived, John was home. He immediately yelled at her. "Where have you been? Who were you talking to? What were you thinking when you threw that disgusting food at us? This was an important customer." Kathy cut in. "So important that you had to entertain her on your examination table?" John was furious. He growled, "That's the way it's going to be from now on. If I want to work late, you'll have to put up with it. If you don't like it, you can leave if you dare." He huffed at her. "Do you understand?" Katie was horrified. She recoiled from him and nodded her head affirmatively. "Good," he muttered. "Now go upstairs and clean yourself up." Katie went into the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. The next morning, Katie woke up in the same clothes as the day before. Katie went to the bathroom and was surprised to see that her entire face was swollen. All day, she had been putting something cold on her face to relieve the swelling. John was nowhere to be found. Kathy breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't want to see him anyway. John didn't come home until Sunday afternoon. He didn't explain his whereabouts in any way, and she didn't bother asking. That evening, John wanted to have some fun. Kathy refused. He left again. On Monday, he came home to shower and change his clothes, then left for the office. The girls listened in silence, first in complete shock at her story, then angry at John's callousness. Lisa suggested to Kathy, "Go to the police and have him arrested for assault." "No," Katie shouted. "I want this marriage to work out. I want it to work out. I've already messed up one marriage." The women exploded. "He did something disgusting to you. Do you think this is the last time?" Rosa shouted. "I know," Katie replied. "I just can't give up so quickly." Lisa got angry. "I don't know what to do. I'm giving up," and walked away. Rose left too, but only after taking a quick picture on her cell phone. She knew exactly what she was going to do. Rose left work a half hour early. She drove straight to Tom's store. She parked the car at one of the open bays and walked to the door to the store. Tom was working on a 1964 Jaguar XKE when he looked up and saw Rose pull into the parking lot in front of Bay Hash 2. He grabbed a rag to wipe his hands and smiled as Rose got out of the car. Rose did not notice him at first because he was in the shadows of the store at that time of day. When he stepped out of the shadows, she considered the handsome man walking towards her. She had always been impressed with his body. As Tom walked confidently toward her with a wide smile on his face, Rose thought Kathy was crazy for refusing to do this. "Good to see you, Rose. Are you having car trouble?" He asked. "No, nothing like that. I need to talk to you in private, if that's okay." He looked at her perplexed for a second, then said, "Sure, come into the study." Rose followed him where he sat down at a small, cluttered desk and indicated for her to sit in the chair across from him. For a while, they sat in silence. He waited for her to start a conversation. Rose wasn't sure how to begin and finally let slip. "Katie is having problems with John." The neutral expression on his face changed to anger and then contempt. "Any problems in her relationship with that jerk are no longer my problems, and good riddance." He couldn't finish the sentence. Even if he thought she was a whore, he couldn't talk about Kathy like that. Firedly, Tom began, "Rose, I just don't care if they're in trouble. What does that have to do with me? Remember the day you met us outside work? When you gave her the box of Beatles songs?" "Yeah, I remember." "It didn't work out, did it?" "It didn't work out. That bitch didn't even call. She ripped my heart out. So now what? I'm supposed to care about what happens to her? I mean, she didn't care about me, did she?" Yum ranted. Rose was stunned by his outburst. Perhaps she was wrong. Perhaps he thought she deserved to be treated like this by her lover. If the love he felt for her turned to hate, would he care? She stated emphatically, "It's more than that." She pulled out her phone and scrolled down the picture from this morning. She held the phone out to him. She tried to read his face, but there was no emotion on it. not the slightest hint of what was going on behind the mask on his face. "When did you do this?" he asked. "This morning," Rose replied. He looked at it for a few more seconds and held it out to Rose. "This is really bad. What do you want from me?" he asked. Rose was shocked at his indifference. "Aren't you going to do something? What about what you told Lisa and me? You said you'd tell her if anyone tried to hurt her. She's already been hurt. Was what you told us really just bullshit?" She screamed. "Call the police, Rose. It looks like assault and battery." Rose was furious. "That's it? That's all you have to say?" Tom replied, "What do you want me to say? Do you expect me to defend her virtue? She hasn't any virtue. She had an affair. She broke her vows. She didn't care about me. She didn't care about my pain. Give me one reason why I should care about her pain. Give me one good reason, Rose." "Give me one good reason," Tom begged. She looked into his eyes. She saw the pain in them. "Because you love her, I can see it in your face. Isn't that a good reason?" Rose stated. "I'm sorry, Rose, you're wrong. I loved her once then, but not now. The feeling I have for her is definitely not love. It's not love anymore." "Tell her to call the police. I won't get involved," stated Tom firmly. Rose looked at him long and hard and finally shook her head. As she left the office, she turned and addressed him. "You surprised me today. I thought better of you. I never thought you would let any man do that to your wife." He stood up abruptly. For the first time today, she saw anger flare in his eyes. "And that's the crux of the matter. She's not my wife. If she was my wife, I'd die before I let some asshole touch her. She chose that asshole over me. I was her husband. And yet she chose him over me. I guess she wanted to switch, to be a doctor's wife instead of a mechanic's. She made her own bed, let her lie down," growled an agonizing Tom. Rose replied, "I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't realize how you felt. Not that I blame you. She must have hurt you badly." Rose sympathized. "Tell her to call the authorities, Rose. Tell her to get a divorce. She already knows how to do it. I'm sorry if I disappointed you today, Rose, but I just can't," he replied. Rose walked through the doorway and out of the store. Tom followed her. Nevin. He stood in the middle of the bay and stared after her. Opening the car door, Rose apologized to him and said sadly, "I'm sorry I bothered you today. I hope I didn't ruin your evening." He didn't say anything back. Before starting the car, Rose looked through the windshield into his face. The expression on his face was hard to read. Pain, anger, contempt, hatred. Rose couldn't tell what it was. Perhaps it was a mixture of all those emotions. Whatever his emotions were, he chose not to help. Rose started the car and drove off. "Katie, you've ruined everything," she thought as she drove away from the house. She had failed today when she had been so sure Tom would help. Driving away, Rose didn't know how to help her. Katie came to work on Thursday and Friday. She was becoming increasingly irritable. On Monday morning, Kathy changed. Everyone saw and felt it when she walked in the door to work. She said hi to everyone and even smiled, something Kathy hadn't done in a very long time. Lisa and Rose pulled Kathy into their sanctuary, the women's restroom, and closed the door. "What's going on, Katie? What's wrong?" Lisa asked. "John was attacked Friday night outside his office. Whoever did it made him promise to apologize to me. John said the attacker told him that if he didn't apologize to me, he would find out about it, go back and finish the job, whatever that meant. John doesn't know that, but I know who it was," Katie sang out. "How do you know?" Rose asked. "I heard him talking to himself in the shower this weekend and cursing my ex-husband Tom," giggled Kathy. "How could he know about that?" Kathy asked. Rose replied, "It was me. I told him about it on Wednesday after work." Katie hugged Rose and thanked her. Katie told her friends that she had made her decision and was leaving John. Tomorrow, she would go to a lawyer to get a divorce. Katie thanked Rose again for her help. Rose replied, "Don't thank me. I didn't beat the crap out of your husband." Katie thought, "Maybe you're right. I should go and thank him myself. I don't know, Kathy. He's not too fond of you right now. You didn't hear him talking about you when I went to see him," Rose warned. "I know, Rose, after what I did, he probably hates me, but I still need to thank him in person. It's the least I can do," Katie stated. Both women agreed. Lisa entered the pub on Easton Avenue. Lisa entered the pub first, followed by Rose, with Kathy nestled in the back. They sat down at a table a few feet away. Tom sat behind the bar, deep in thought, sipping his second gin and tonic. He didn't notice them enter. Lisa gestured for Kathy to come forward. A nervous Kathy flinched slightly and walked over to her ex-husband. She sat down in the empty seat next to him and saw his bandaged and swollen right arm. His left hand was scratched, but not so badly that he couldn't lift a glass with it. He hadn't noticed that someone was sitting to his right. His mind must have been on something else that evening. Kathy reached for his bandaged arm and said, "It must really hurt." His head didn't move, but his eyes moved to his right and he saw her. "It's not that bad. It'll get better in a few weeks. What do you need, Katie?" he asked in a not-too-friendly tone. "Please," Katie pleaded. "I just want to talk, not fight. Do you mind?" He nodded his head. Katie noticed that he didn't remove her hand from his bandaged one. He didn't remove it because he actually still craved her touch no matter how much it hurt. Katie began, "I want to thank you for what you did on Friday. I know it was you. After everything I did, you still helped me when I needed someone. I felt I had to come to thank you in person. I owe you a debt of gratitude." She looked at his handsome profile without a single blemish from the beating he had given John. Kathy put her hand on his chin and turned him toward her. "You can't even look at me?" His face was clean and unblemished. "He couldn't hurt you in any way, could he?" Katie asked. "He thought you were weak, but you knew that, didn't you? I was worried about you. Probably for nothing." "I guess he was wrong about me," Tom said with a sad smile. Tom took his head out of her hands and turned, bringing the glass to his lips and taking a sip of the clear liquid. "I'm leaving him, Tom," Kathy admitted. "I'm going to move in with Lisa until I get my own place. I'm going to divorce John. I want to start seeing you again if you'll let me. I realize what I did was stupid. I finally found out who my true love is, and it's you. I desperately want what we had back. I want you back if you'll let me." He finally turned to face Katie and pulled his bandaged hand out from under her arm. "You wanted to thank me?" He replied angrily. "It wasn't necessary. Were you worried?" "Hardly. Were you worried that morning when you left me alone in the house to go out with that asshole? Did you care about my pain, what I was going through? No. You only cared about yourself. Why do you care now? You got what you wanted. But I get it. Why stick with a regular car mechanic when you can be a doctor's wife? Isn't that right? So you used me, didn't you? All of you. You got what you wanted from me. What did I get? I got more pain. My hands hurt like hell. My girlfriend got mad enough to dump me for helping you. I could still go to jail for my actions. Tomorrow, you will have another long-lost lover in your bed to keep you company. The only company I will have is my pain. Why don't you go away? All three of you, leave me alone." Katie shook her head in response to his verbal onslaught. Looking her straight in the eye, he said, "Just leave." Kathy went pale under his onslaught. She didn't realize how much he was hurting. The pain was easy to see in his eyes. It was written all over his face. Before John's bullying, she had never given much thought to what he was going through. Now she finally understood. John was doing to her what she was doing to Tom. Now she understood the pain, the betrayal, and the humiliation. Yes, now she knew, but what to do now? Katie started to speak, but he silenced her with a wave of his bandaged hand. "If you don't leave, I will." He spat. He quickly slid off the bar stool and was gone in a flash, casting Rose and Lisa a disapproving glance as he passed them and headed out the door. Katie was visibly shaken. She looked at the women with a bewildered expression on her face. "Go after him, Kathy," Lisa requested. The women ran out the door and saw Tom driving away in his pickup truck. They went to Lisa's house to discuss what had happened that night. Neither of them were happy with the way things had turned out. Kathy pulled out the last of the blue boxes. She opened it. There was no note in the box. She put it into the player and listened to Randy Travis start singing "I Told You So." As she listened to the song, she remembered. It was a Wednesday night. Lisa and Kathy went to the mailbox to fetch the mail. In one of them was a small package addressed to Kathy. From the handwriting, Kathy knew immediately what it was and from whom, although there was no return address. Katie tore off the brown wrapping paper and found another blue box. As they walked to Lisa's apartment, no one talked about anything. Each of the women was immersed in their own thoughts, wondering what was inside the box. When they entered the apartment, Lisa asked, "Kathy, are you going to listen to the CD?" Kathy shook her head. "Yes." She couldn't speak without tears. Lisa took the CD and inserted it into the player. Randy Travis's voice filled the room. "Suppose I call you tonight and tell you I love you. And suppose I say, I want to come home. And suppose I cry and say, I think I finally learned my lesson. And I'm tired of spending all my time alone. If I told you that, I realize that you're all I need. And it's killing me to be so far away. Would you tell me you love me too, and would we cry together? Or will you just laugh at me and say, I told you, oh, I told you. I told you that one day you would come crawling back and ask me to take you in. I told you, but you had to go. Now I've found a new man, and you'll never break my heart in two again." Kathy's heart broke again, just as it had that night at Lisa's apartment. Tom had let her know he was done with her. He would never let her back into his life again. For the first time in a long time, Katie burst into tears. She let it all out. All her grief spilled out. How much she missed her ex-husband. She realized that she had been foolish to give up what she had, just like Lisa had told her when everything first happened. She cursed her stupidity. Kathy quit her job at the insurance company shortly after she received the box from Tom in the mail. She took a job as a receptionist at a local doctor's office. It didn't pay very well, but she didn't have to endure the disgusted stares and constant whispering of her coworkers. Katie stayed with Lisa for 3 months. She rented a small apartment from an elderly patient she had met at the doctor's office. Her divorce from John was going through the court system. She began receiving alimony from John through the court system. This money, combined with her new job, was enough to pay the rent on her new place. Kathy was not idle in trying to get her life back with Tom. She called him many times. He didn't pick up, and she left messages for him to call her back. She asked him to apologize for his actions and begged him to call back, but he never called back. This only made Kathy more determined. Kathy began sending emails to the address in Kensington where Tom still lived. Emails were sent every few days. There was no response to them either. Kathy and Lisa planned to go out Friday night. It was decided that Kathy would pick Lisa up and they would get ready for their date at Kathy's new place. Kathy picked up Lisa from her house and drove to the new place. As they pulled up to Katie's apartment, they were surprised to see Tom's cousin Janice and Katie's former coworker Grace in the parking lot. "What are they doing here?" Lisa wondered. "I have no idea, but I don't like seeing Janice again. And what is Grace doing here with her?" Kathy was puzzled. Lisa guessed why they were here. She was hiding something from Kathy. The girls got out of the car and cautiously approached Janice and Grace. Janice waited until Kathy and Lisa approached them before she spoke. "Hi, Kathy." Janice opened the door. "Grace and I would like to talk to you about something that concerns all of us. Would you mind if we went inside and talked privately?" Katie was wary. She remembered the last time she had spoken to Janice. She didn't want a repeat of that confrontation. "What are you talking about, Janice? I don't want any trouble," Kathy replied. "Why don't you leave her alone? Why would you want to open old wounds?" Lisa pleaded. Grace looked sympathetically at Lisa and Kathy before replying. "I would leave her, Lisa, but I think Kathy needs to know about this. Please, Kathy, could we go inside and talk privately?" Grace asked. Confused, Kathy looked at Lisa for some direction. Lisa nodded to Kathy as if to say, "Let's go inside and talk." Startled, Kathy replied, "Let's go inside." Once inside Kathy's small home, the girls made small talk, complimenting Kathy on her jewelry. Sitting down at the kitchen table, Grace finally got around to asking why she and Janice were here. Grace began, "Kathy, I have something to tell you, and it's not what you want to hear. I know you've been sending letters and emails to Tom. I know about the phone calls as well. What business is it of yours that I'm trying to communicate with him? It's still a free country. If I want to call him, I will. He never told me not to call. If he had told me not to, I would have stopped. He wants you to stop. He's too polite to tell you that. He's afraid you won't take it normally," Grace informed Kathy. "Kathy," Janice intervened, "please just hear us out. We don't want to make things difficult for you. We know you don't know that. Tom and Grace are getting married next Saturday. Kathy was shocked. Janice could see that her eyes were watering. If she wanted to speak, she couldn't seem to. Kathy, please don't call, email, or send letters to Tom. I am a jealous woman, and I would hate to see another woman trying to contact my new husband. I'm sorry you never found out the true meaning of the gift. I was lucky. I knew what it was about when I first heard When I Fall in Love on your CD player that day at the office, Grace added. Janice reached into her bag, pulled out a thin red box, and held it out to Kathy. There was no anger in Janice's voice as she said to Kathy, "Listen to the CD that is in this box. I'm really sorry about the way things turned out. We want you to know that we didn't come here to hurt you, but you needed to know that." Katie turned to Lisa as Janice and Grace left the apartment and asked, "Did you know about this?" "Yes," Lisa replied guiltily. "I didn't know how to tell you. Grace told us a few weeks ago. I knew you were trying to get back with Tom. I knew it would hurt. I couldn't tell you. I knew it would hurt you too much." Kathy inserted the CD into the slot of her machine. Kathy took another sip of wine and looked at her watch. It was 2:30 p.m. It had only been an hour and a half before she remembered the trip with her ex-husband. She looked at the red box that stood at the end of the row of boxes. She picked up the box, pulled out a CD, and slid it into the slot of the machine like she had done a week ago. The Shirelles band began singing the 1961 hit Foolish Little Girl. "You broke his heart and made him cry. And he's been gay ever since. Now he's found someone new. And you want him back again. Silly little girl, fickle little girl. You didn't want him when he wanted you. He's found another love. He dreams of her. And there's nothing you can do about it." Katie realized that Janice was right. There was nothing she could do about the mess she had made of her life. She needed to stop trying to get back what she had lost. Of course it was her fault. She knew that Tom and Grace were probably walking back from the altar as a married couple right now. Or maybe they were standing in line at the reception, greeting guests. Whatever they were doing, she wouldn't be thought of or missed. Thinking, she finally realized what the gift was. It was the very thing she had so carelessly thrown away, whereas Grace had realized it when she first heard When I Fall in Love that day at the office. Grace had been annoyed that it had taken her so long to realize it. Now, finally, she understood it. This was the most special gift she had waited so long for. That gift was his love. The end. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.